It's time to get the inside info on BYU with Cougar insider Mitch Harper of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Trajan Wealth brings you this portion of the show, TRAJAN Wealth.com. It's Trajan Wealth for all your trusted local needs in retirement. Mitch Harper, what's going on, man? How are you, dude?
Doing good, guys. Happy to be with you tonight.
Good to talk to you. Always good to jam with you a little bit. We just had a massive University of Arizona fan come over to the booth. Convenient time for them to come in and start talking about bearing down and Wildcats and blah blah blah. Look, that was a heck of a game. At least the end of it was a heck of a game. Look, to go into that game playing the number one team in the country in your building, but being down by double digits most of the game did not help that team's cause. I know that it was fun to watch the Cardiac Cougs come back, but you can't do that against the number one team in the country and feel like you're going to get away with it. No question.
And it was, BYU, they got the three ball working with them for them, and they had 13 made threes, and I thought that was going to be, a real X factor against an Arizona team that doesn't put up many threes, yet Arizona's style of play once again won the day. They are a tough out. They can beat you in so many different ways, and they didn't even have great play from guys like Koa Pete, Toby Awaka, Krivas, and they still pretty much were in control for about 35 minutes of that game against BYU. BYU's got to play a lot better. I think that there is reason for optimism going forward. I don't think this is a hit the panic button moment for BYU, but they definitely have to respond after that missed opportunity at home.
So I'll take the positive approach to this game against Arizona for BYU. They did come back just like they did against UConn. It felt very similar in the way the game ended up shaking out. BYU lost by 3 to the number one team in the country, and AJ Dybantsa and Robert Wright combined to go 9 of 40. They're not going to have many days. I can't imagine them having any more days struggling like that from your top two players. Mitch, you see what happens, and how important it is that their big three has it going on. But I can't imagine you're going to have that rough of a shooting night from those two guys, and they still found a way to have a shot to win it at the end.
I agree, and because we've seen this entire season that AJ has been a really efficient player, and nothing was working for him on Monday. Even his signature mid-range shots weren't falling. Nothing was falling for AJ in that game, and he had a lot of open looks, just didn't hit them. And so I don't expect that much going forward. I mean, if you're going to have the bad performance, let it be, I guess, against the number one team in the country. I expect a big bounce-back performance tomorrow against Kansas in a spotlight game where, so many NBA scouts and people are going to be looking to see that AJ versus Darryn Peterson matchup. I think it's going to be a great game. I would expect, a bounce back from AJ and from Rob Wright too. I mean, he's so good at getting downhill for this BYU attack, and he's got to do a better job at finishing at the rim. He's been really good too at three-point range, about 40% this season. Just kind of an off night for those guys, but I don't expect that to be the norm going forward for them.
Mitch, one of the things that this team has done is since they've been in the Big 12, they haven't been afraid of going to play well at Kansas. And going into Fog is never going to be easy, but they need to bounce back, and they need to get some wins here because of how difficult the rest of this, like even just the schedule right in front of them. They're playing a lot of really, really good ranked teams in the Big 12, which it's chock full of. But how do they get this one against Kansas at Fog tomorrow?
I think, BYU has got to take care of possessions. They're 14th in the Big 12 right now in Big 12 play in turnovers. That's going to be something that I'm kind of curious to watch for in this one. Kansas has played some pretty good defense. I think Kansas has turned the corner a little bit. I don't put them in the same realm as, Arizona or Texas Tech or Houston. They're kind of in that next grouping with BYU. And, both of these teams, I think, are looking for a signature quad 1A type of win. Because when you look at BYU's resume to this point, their best win probably to date is the season opener against Villanova in Vegas. As strange as that sounds, because they played a lot of good teams, that's probably the best win. And it's a good win, but it's not a great win. And yet they're still probably a top 16 seed in bracketology right now. But if you want to get into that 2 seed, 3 seed territory, you got to get wins like the opportunity in front of you tomorrow. And, I think that BYU has got to take care of the ball. I think also, too, there's so much talk about Darryn Peterson, but Melvin Council, a grad transfer from St. Bonaventure, he's been taking over the ball a lot more in recent games. Peterson was out in the last game, but Council has become kind of like the fan favorite for Kansas, and he's a real difference maker. He's going to be one to watch tomorrow because he's been so impactful for this Kansas turnaround where they started out really slow. Looked like they've kind of turned a corner with that team.
So, Mitch, what is on the line for AJ Dybantsa Saturday? So much is being made of this matchup between him and Darryn Peterson. I know it's just one game, but it feels like this is a pretty big stage, and we saw what he did on that stage against Utah the second time around. What is at stake for AJ in this game?
It really feels kind of like a narrative game in so many ways, where it just feels like, because really it's like no matter what happens tomorrow, AJ at worst is the number 3 pick, a top 3 pick. Same with Darryn Peterson. At worst, probably top 2 for him. But so it feels kind of like a little bit of almost like a narrative game where people are going to make these grand conclusions about AJ and BYU based on the outcome and his box score in this game. But I think the great thing about AJ this year and what's been so impressive about him is that he's really not about making it about himself. I'm really curious to see, BYU spacing and kind of getting that ball flowing a little bit, passing the ball, making those half-second decisions, as Kevin Young talks about so much, because you got to still have the isolation opportunities for AJ, but kind of get that ball spread around. And AJ likes to do that. He just hasn't had the knockdown three-point shooters around him consistently to where, BYU can turn to that. But you'd like to think with Kennard Davis getting a little bit of momentum, hitting 5 threes on Monday, maybe he can carry over that momentum into tomorrow. Alexei Kostic coming off the bench can add some value, and Richie Saunders too. Richie's had a little bit of up and down in terms of his knockdown percentage on three-point shots. Richie's big in this game tomorrow because with guys like Rob Wright and AJ, they will find Richie. They will find the open shooters. You got to knock them down. So that's going to be big because I think AJ, he's obviously going to be, wanting to probably perform at the best he possibly can, but ultimately he's not going to make it about him. He wants to just get a win because he's 0-2 against Darryn Peterson in the high school ranks. He wants to get the victory on the college side.
Mitch, when you consider how long these basketball seasons, the conference season in the Big 12 is just a knockdown, drag out every night. And getting through all of this, does it, like when you see the bracketology stuff, does that kind of stuff compute with this team and with Kevin Young, or do they just go, look, we're in a tough conference, 3 seed, 4 seed, you fall to a 5 seed maybe, or you go up to another? Like, does that stuff matter to them, or because obviously, like when you get to the end of the season, people start talking like that, but I don't know if that kind of stuff actually affects this coaching staff or these players.
Yeah, I think you're right, Alex. I don't think they are really fazed by that right now. And I think they understand, though, that if they want to get to the destination that they believe they can, which is maybe a Final Four, they've got the top-end talent in this roster to do that, but it hasn't looked like that for a few weeks now. They just haven't consistently strung together some great basketball. And the nice thing about Kevin Young, what we learned last year about his team, his program, they can go through some lows and some peaks, but they don't peak until March. Last year that was a team that didn't peak until March, which is what you want to do. I think that's ultimately the reminder that you always have to have in this Big 12 gauntlet is whatever happens tomorrow, you got so many opportunities in the Big 12 to boost up that resume and schedule, that you can, improve your seed lines, and you ultimately want to play at your best in March. But I think for this team, if you do want to get to a Final Four, you want to be in that, 2-seed territory, 1-seed territory. And 1 seed might be a distant thought at this point, but 2 seed could still be on the table if you get hot and turn things around, because last year we saw the NCAA tournament was chalky. And if you want to have the best path or maybe best odds to get to a Final Four, You want to get as high of a seed as possible, and that's, I think, what's important with these type of games, because ultimately this team's going to be in the in-state tournament. That's not a worry. It's just getting the best possible seed that really matches up with the talent that this team, I think we all think has, and if they can live up to that.
Yeah, still 5 games against ranked opponents in the Big 12 coming up: Kansas, Houston, Arizona, Iowa State, and Texas Tech. So the Cougars are going to get those shots. But you're right, Mitch, they got to start winning those high-profile big games against conference opponents. And to do that, they're going to need somebody to step up. How important was it to see Kennard Davis finally start knocking down threes? And if he's able to do that, maybe not at that high of a rate, but just consistently contributing from the three-point line or on the defensive end, what will that do for BYU's chances moving forward? Because we know who the big three are.
I think it's huge because, there's been games where BYU, you go with the TCU, Utah game in Salt Lake, where they were hitting about 22% from three. It's been really up and down shooting the three ball this season for BYU. And if Kennard Davis, who was viewed as a 3-and-D guy and someone that this coaching staff looked at, maybe in a best case scenario, he could work his way into a two-way deal potentially one day as a pro prospect maybe. He's got to knock those shots down, because it was almost like a back against the wall type moment on Monday in that second half where he had missed 13 consecutive threes. It was getting to the point where, can he contribute to this team anymore? I mean, what's going on? And then he hits those 5 threes and really turned it around. That was big for him. And I think that's going to be something that you hope that can carry over into Saturday and the weeks ahead for this team, because they need that. Because outside of the top 3, and to a lesser extent, Kaba Keita, who you can consistently expect a certain level of play from Kaba, about 6 points, 9 to 10 boards every single game. But the rest of it, you don't know what to really expect. And so it'd be nice that you don't have to get, 70 plus from your big 3 every single night, because as of late, especially in these big games, it feels like you almost need 75 points from the big 3 to have a chance. And I still would say tomorrow you probably need at least 70 from the big 3, because I haven't seen enough consistently from the Kennard Davises, from the Alexei Kostiches, to say that you can confidently expect that. But they have given you flashes that maybe they can ease the workload for that big 3 to not have to expect as much in what's going to be a super energized crowd. I mean, at Allen Fieldhouse, it just sounds like, these Kansas fans, they are hyped up for this game. And who would have thought 2 years ago that a BYU game would conjure up this much excitement for a blue blood like Kansas? And that speaks to the growth of BYU's program and the opportunity that's in front of them. So huge opportunity. And I think the big 3 for BYU will show up, but those supporting cast pieces, will they be, deer in the headlight looks for that big stage? That's kind of to be determined. That's going to be something that's interesting to see tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because the wild thing is, and maybe we get convinced of this, but I like BYU actually has the higher profile, like top end of their roster over a Kansas team in Kansas. So they're just as compelling as Kansas is, and that is it's not a thought of like, oh, they could come in and sneak away from the big time program with an upset that, a couple of years ago that was the case. And now, to be that team that's out there that would have just as much firepower as Kansas is pretty wild. I want to ask you a quick football question. The transfer portal, of course, if players are already in there, they can be signed by teams. How active do you think BYU will be in the next little bit here, I guess, around? Are we going to hear anything between spring, or is it going to be something that we hear maybe post-spring, or what's kind of the rest of how stuff shakes out on a calendar for these players to maybe still sign with BYU or Utah or whomever?
You could see a few more preferred walk-on type of transfers maybe added. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you see maybe 1 or 2, but for the most part, the good bulk of BYU's roster is on the board for 2026, and it's just maybe plugging some gaps. And if there is a maybe injury or 2 in spring ball, maybe you could adjust accordingly and go get someone in the portal potentially. But for the most part, the portal has been rated in terms of guys that can, be expected to contribute right away for maybe a Power 4 program, and one like BYU that's going to have high expectations. But I think that's going to be, BYU will be very selective going forward. But for the most part, their roster's intact for 2026, and it's a really good one that the Cougars are going to have next season.
You guys, I'm assuming, are going to have a little bit of a short show for Cougar Sports Saturday tomorrow, right, before you guys walk into coverage of basketball?
Yes, we will have coverage beginning. We'll have noon to 1:30, so in that 90-minute show on News Radio, and get ready for BYU and Kansas. Should be a really good game.
Cougar Sports Saturday. Mitch Harper, of course, you see his byline at KSLSports.com. Nobody in this market better than Mitch Harper covering the BYU Cougars. Mitch, we appreciate it, man. We'll chat with you again.
Hey, take care, guys. See you.
There you go.
Thanks, Mitch.
Harper.